Hello, welcome everybody to the first episode of Bassin and Biology. I'm your host, Thad Moody. If you're wondering why I'm wearing this outfit, it's because my university charges $200 to walk across the stage in it for your master's degree, and I plan on getting my money's worth. Alright, today's topic is front-facing sonar. Hot topic a few years ago, still a big hot topic now. In today's episode, we're going to get a viewpoint of someone who both has a master's degree in conservation biology and someone who tournament bass fishes. So we kind of get perspectives on both sides. We're also going to talk about a few published studies on the effects so far that we have seen on fish population and dynamics in lakes because of front-facing sonar. Alright, so let's get started. First off, let's kind of talk about the two situations. We have bass, which is a very high catch and release species, so high in fact that the catch and release rates are negatively impacting our fisheries populations. We're going to get to that at another time. That'll be a different episode where we talk about how catch and release has actually devastated versus helped a lot of our fisheries. And the second thing we're going to look at is harvestable species, how it has affected stuff such as crappie, catfish, and targeting trophy species. So that's the two winners we're going at. One is the high catch and release species such as bass and muskie, and in one of our studies, it actually covers Australia and other countries. So we're going to look at things like Murray cod as well. And then we're going to look at high keep species like brim and crappie and catfish, species that people specifically target to harvest and how that has affected some of their populations. So we're going to start off with a publication by BASS themselves, by Bass themselves. It is by a professor of fisheries biology in Florida, at the University of Florida, named Mike Allen. And to sum up what his study says is that as far as populations of largemouth bass that he has studied and he has seen and he has surveyed from anglers and doing creel surveys on lakes that's been fished with front-facing sonar, that he has not seen a huge impact on the bass populations in those lakes due to front-facing sonar, again, because bass are a high catch and release species. Now, he does have some concern for species such as crappie that are targeted and caught specifically to harvest. And he, like I said, he does have concern on that, and he states that in the article, but he does state that more studies need to be done. And I agree with that, 100%. More studies need to be done on both the bass population and the effects it has on it, as well as species like crappie and catfish, because front-facing sonar has been around for a handful of years. Major studies to see population density effects cannot be done truly in a year because there's all kind of other things that could affect it. The droughts we've had in the last few years, especially here in the South. Invasive species coming in, such as snakehead or the Asian carp boom we've seen here in the South. Invasive vegetation, such as giant milfoil or hydrilla or eelweed. So those can all also have effects on population density, carrying capacity, and such as that. So it's not something you can do in 1 year. It needs to be I would say honestly, to get a true picture of the effects of front-facing sonar, a 5 to 10 year study needs to be conducted. And the only true way to do that is if anglers participate with creel surveys, what they're catching, if they're using front-facing sonar or not. And citizen scientists, you really cannot do this without the help of the fishermen. So again, this was an article published by Bass, by a fisheries biologist named Mike S. Allen. Now, we're going to look at a second article. It's called Emerging Live Sonar Technology in Freshwater Recreational Fisheries, Issues and Opportunities. Now, this particular study does not just envelop the United States or the Southeast like the other one does. This is looked at on multiple continents at multiple species that are both targeted for trophy, recreation, and harvestability, such as crappie, your muskellunge, largemouth bass, and Murray cod. So what this study has found so far, and this one was published in January of 2025, so it is a newer publication. The BASS study was published in 2024, about a year ago. This one was published in January. And what we see here and what the studies found is that using front-facing sonar makes it easier to target trophy class fish. Murray cod take a long time to get really big. A meter-long Murray cod, or for us in the States, a little over 3 foot long Murray cod is what's considered a fish of like a trophy fish. It's also one of your big breeding specimens. So front-facing sonar allows these fishermen to specifically target trophy class specimens, which, depending on how they're handled, how they're hooked, how they're released, if they're kept or not, could have effects on population density, because again, those are your breeding class fish. Those are your ones who's going to produce the next 5, 6, 7 generations of that species of fish. So another thing it talks on is targeting species such as muskie, the muskellunge, and how it can be used to target trophy class fish. Again, another point brought up to that. It gives the angler more opportunity, instead of blind casting for, muskies, the fish of 10,000 casts, it becomes the fish of a couple dozen casts, because the fish will either dart off and they can follow it around and pretty much harass it till it bites. And that's one thing stated in this study, which I have seen on the bass angler side as well. Kayaks and boats, both going out following a specific fish until it either goes away where they can't follow it anymore, darts off so they can't see it, or eventually, bites, they catch it, take a picture, release it, weigh in, however they go about doing it. And front-facing sonar has given anglers the ability to target trophy class fish more easily. Has it upped the success rate of catching more fish? We're going to talk about that actually in just a minute. But for sure, it has upped your chances of catching a trophy-sized fish. A double-digit bass, 50-inch muskie, meter-long Murray cod, or even here in Mississippi, which I'm talking about with the crappie, 2+ pound crappie, which used to be a, pretty common occurrence. You'd catch 2 and 3 pounders, sometimes 4 pounders here in Mississippi through our crappie lake chains on the regular. Crappie tournaments would have weigh-ins, and you'd see multiple bags, 4-pound fish, and we're seeing a kind of change in that. We're fixing to get to that in just a second. So I got my handy notebook. I always suggest, if you want to learn more about fishing and outdoors, get you a notebook that is waterproof pages and write in it with a pencil, not a pen, because if it gets wet, it will still run, but a pen will not, or a pencil will not. Pen will, pencil won't. So to circle back to the other study, the one that encompasses multiple continents, the big aspect of it is there's not enough research on the actual effects of front-facing sonar on fish populations at the moment. They highly suggest we do more research, more studies to see the true scope and effect of front-facing sonar and the effects it has on fishing populations. Next, we're going to stick with the bass for just one more study more, and it comes out of Texas with the Texas Parks, Wildlife, and Fisheries. And this study shows, and this was one of the little controversial when I was looking it up. I read a lot of comments, and of course you're always going to have controversy when it comes to fishing and people's comments. Some people are going to be happy with what it says. Other people will say, oh no, that's not true. I've seen it with my own eyes, yada, yada, yada. That's both aspects that us as biologists have to take into account. One person said it's not true, this is what I'm actually seeing. And one person saying, no, this is what we're actually seeing. We have to take that, analyze that, and figure out which pathway to take with that information. But the study from Texas, and this was done, I believe, on Lake Fork. Yes. Study shows an average of caught with users versus non-users. So what this study is showing, the average number of fish that were caught by people using front-facing sonar versus people not using front-facing sonar. And when they did the study, it was almost 50-50 for the amount of people who did use front-facing sonar and people who didn't. And the big takeaway they got from this is front-facing sonar users only catch 1.5 to 2 more bass a day but this does not go into what class of fish. So while they may only be catching, and I guess it is 1.5 because you have to do an average. It's all averages. You're very rarely going to get a solid number on average, but on average, the front-facing sonar user is only catching 1.5 to 2 more bass a day than those not using front-facing sonar. But this does not go into what class of fish really was caught. Is that 1 to 2 more fish a day, 6-7 pounders versus people not using catching 1 to 2 pounders, or is it even across the board? They caught 2 more 4 pounders than the 4 pounders that the person not using front-facing sonar caught. Again, it's a whole situation that needs more to study. It needs tighter parameters on a lot of things. A lot of the data we're getting currently is that front-facing sonar can increase the catch number and the quality size of fish. We don't know what the true effects of that are on population densities as of right now. We need tighter parameters, more studies, and more funding to actually see the true effects of it. We can go for people say on the lake all day long that, I'm not catching as many bass. They're not where they used to be. They're not this, they're not that. Well, things do change, and we're going to go into some of the changes of fish in just a minute. Before we go into some of the migratory and changes of bass behavior, we're going to talk about one more thing that I've actually seen here in person in Mississippi. I've talked to some fisheries biologists here in Mississippi who work for the DNR. I'm not going to ever name names, but I've talked to them. I've talked to tournament anglers. I have talked to those who guide, and I've talked to those who recreational fish for crappie. Now in Mississippi, catfish and crappie is king. We have the largest producer of catfish, farm-raised catfish in the world, Belzona, Mississippi. But our crappie lakes are world-renowned. We have people coming from all over the country and world to fish our crappie lakes. Lakes such as Arca Butler, whose dam recently failed and is getting rebuilt, Sardis Reservoir, Grenada Reservoir, Enid Reservoir, Moon Lake, Ross Barnett, about 3 other major crappie lakes. And these are lakes where 3 pounders are very common. 3-pound white crappie, 2 to 3-pound black crappie, and on occasion you catch 4 pounders. The world record white crappie actually comes from Enid Lake in Enid, Mississippi. So we have monstrous crappie here. We have the perfect water, the perfect growing season, the perfect food supplies to grow giant, numerous crappie. But in recent years, and I know I said write with a pen, or don't write with a pen because it runs stuff, but I'm using a pen with my hands to point. But in recent years, they have seen a steady decline in crappie size and population density. And it kind of coincided, whether it be incidental or it's an effect of front-facing sonar. Other things that could be an effect of, all those reservoirs are used as flood control reservoirs, and they are greatly lowered and risen by the federal government in the last few years. The extreme droughts we've had here in the South the last few years, and a few other weather incidents. We've had extreme drought, extreme heat, and an extreme cold in the winter that we're not used to here, negative temperatures. All those can also greatly affect crappie populations when it comes to water levels, less water, less places to breed, less places in the nest, water temperatures fluctuating tremendously. All those can also greatly affect crappie population density, the growth of them, and a few other things. So, is the shrinking crappie population size and density because of anglers using front-facing sonar to target them? Well, we need more research on that. But what we have seen in Mississippi recently, in some lakes, Mississippi has reduced the creel limit, which reduces the number that you can catch, as well as changed the size limit of our popular lakes. So you can keep less and they have to be bigger. I believe a lot of them now are 10 to 12 inches, and some being 14 to 15 inch crappie. That those are the size you have to keep. And it didn't used to be that. I think a lot of lakes now is 12 to 15 is how many you can keep. It used to be around 20 to 30. I'm not much of a crappie fisherman. I know my state's famous for it. I've always been a bass fisherman. But we have seen a reduction in crappie populations. Now, things I've heard from anglers is a whole different story. Some anglers are saying they're catching more crappie than ever in the shallows. Well, if you're catching a ton of crappie in 1 to 3 feet of water, front-facing sonar is really not affecting those species at that time for breeding. That's when they come up shallow to bed. I've talked to some out-of-state guides who actually pay for a guiding license in Mississippi. So that means they come from out of state to guide in the state of Mississippi for crappie. I've talked to one from Wisconsin, Alabama, Missouri, and Tennessee. That being said, a lot of them saying they are seeing less and less crappie. Even using front-facing sonar, they're seeing less crappie, less size, and less abundance than it used to be. And a gentleman from Wisconsin, and again, this is a guide, so that he makes his living guiding for crappie. He says he wished they would ban the use of front-facing sonar for crappie fishing, which that's coming from a guide who makes his living taking people to catch these big crappie using electronics. If the guides are saying they wish it would become banned, there may be some validity to the problem, to the accusations that front-facing sonar has made a big effect. Again, could it be the weather? Could it be the drought? Could it be the extreme heat and the extreme cold we've had the last few years? Very much could be. But again, we have to have more research, more data, because front-facing sonar has only been around, 5 or so years, and only in the last few years has it really become used heavily by the public. So we can't just get a little bit of data and then hope for the best. We have to do intensive studies to learn more about these populations, what's really going on, what's really affecting them, and how we can fix this situation. But the biggest separation here between crappie and bass fishing has around a 90% release rate, whereas crappie is a heavily harvested species. Very rarely are you going to pull up a boat dock, open up someone's cooler, and see in Mississippi the 10 bass limit inside that cooler, but you're going to see that 10 to 15 crappie limit in that cooler if they're targeting that species. You may see a few bass in there, a few bass here, a few bass there. Some people will keep their limit. And I applaud those people who keep their limit of bass and eat bass, because that needs to happen, and we're going to get to that in a later discussion. But you will see crappie being harvested out. And here in Mississippi, I also see front-facing sonar used to target spoonbills for snagging season, catfish in our rivers. It's very effective. Front-facing sonar is very effective for targeting large catfish or dense areas of catfish to bring up good eating size catfish. And you also see people using front-facing sonar during alligator season to hunt alligators, because in Mississippi you have to spotlight, cast them, and snag. When those alligators go down in these deeper lakes, it's hard to find, so front-facing sonar makes that possible. So once we start making laws and regulations to curve or what you can and can't do with front-facing sonar, we are not just going to have to take and affect the bass, the crappie, but other species such as catfish, spoonbill. Can you use it during alligator season? Is there a way to, mitigate these laws, to enforce these laws when it comes to using front-facing sonar for things other than bass and crappie? That person be out there saying, "Oh, I'm trying to find catfish with my front-facing sonar," but they really got a cooler full of crappie that they quote-unquote call an accident. There's ways and mitigations, and this will be a path that people much smarter than me are going to have to navigate, but it's going to be data provided by people like me that helps them navigate those paths. So that covers a few of the studies that's currently out on it. Now we're going to talk about my experiences when it comes to front-facing sonar. But first, we'll talk a little bit about our sponsors today. So first sponsor, Tactical Fishing Company is one of my sponsors. They have fantastic bait. Their swagger stick, their bait style stick bait is fantastic. It's salted just right, sinks just right. They have a various other worms, bugs, crawfish, swim baits as well. Use code TMoody10 for 10% off your next order. Secondly, True Day of Year. Fantastic boots. I use their deck boots on my kayak when I'm hunting. I use their camo boots. They're lightweight, fit true to size. I wear a size 13 Brooks. These fit size 13 hunting boots and deck boots. Highly recommend them. Use code THADMoodyOutdoors, capital TMO in that Thad Moody Outdoors for 15% off your next purchase with them. Without them, I would not be able to do what I do now. And lastly, I would like to thank Lowrance. Recently upgraded my old Lowrance system to the Active Target 2 with Pro 10s just to kind of see what the fish are actually doing down there. And you'll learn a lot through them. But without these companies, I couldn't fish like I do. I couldn't do what I love like I do. So they support me. All I ask is you support them too. So TMoody10 for Tactical Fishing Company for 10% off, and Thad Moody Outdoors, capital TMO, for 50% off your next True Day purchase. All right, back to our scheduled programming. First, a little drink to wet my whistle. I promise there's only water in there. We're going to see my experiences with front-facing sonar, what I believe is both a fisheries biologist and a tournament angler. First off, my experience with it. Over the last, month to 2 months, I've played with it before on other people's boats and kayaks. I'm a kayak angler. Over the last few months, I've been learning Active Target 2, which is Lowrance's newest front-facing sonar. And I have learned a lot about the fish. They're not always where you think they are, and there's a lot more large bass just swimming out in the open. And we've seen that a lot more. People say, well, the fish aren't where they used to be. Well, fish patterns change. They do. And just like they changed once, people like KVD, who became just absolutely deadly with side scan, you saw a shift in fish populations and where they were after that. Same when it came to flashers before that. And now we're seeing a shift change in where bass are staying, migrating, and hanging out thanks to front-facing sonar. It's a cycle. Salt with side scan, salt with down scan, salt with flashers. Now we're seeing it front-facing. I have seen fish do things I never thought they would do when my bait comes by them. People think, front-facing sonar, it's a plug and play. You plug it in, it's like a video game. You see the fish, you catch fish, they bite the fish. No. I spent 30 minutes casting everything I knew at one particular fish. Never bit it. In fact, I had just caught a few bass deeper off crankbait. I threw this crankbait at this particular large bass. It actually ran away from it. Threw a spinnerbait at it. It followed it for a minute and then ignored it. Threw all kind of worms at it, crawls at it, jigs at it. And it would follow some, it would leave some, and I even had it a couple times follow it all the way back up to my kayak. And that's the only way I knew it really was a bass, because I'm not as good as some of these people who can look on the screen and say, that's a bass, that's a crappie, that's a catfish, that's a carp. This fish actually followed my bait all the way to the kayak. And I watched it and how it behaved. And I did the whole figure eight and everything, and it just went right back down to the deep. And I watched it go back down and sit back up on this point like it was already. I threw everything I had at that fish. Nothing. But what I did see a little more of is these wolf packs. I was watching them as they would hit these balls of shad. And you'd see, and I've seen this in person, that's how I knew how to catch them beforehand. I'd always see these bass start boiling and knew there's a ball of shad there. So I would watch the ball of shad on my side scan or my visual. And I learned that when the first shad start to come up a little bit, go ahead and cast, because once the bass already start coming up and boiling, it's too late to cast on a lot of these wolf packs here in Mississippi. But what I could do on that front-facing sonar is I could, instead of having to try to stand up and look and look and look and look to where this ball of shad, if it's coming up close enough to the surface, I can actually watch it on my front-facing sonar slowly rise, and I can watch these bass sit up under this ball of shad. And I knew the second they hit about a foot from the surface, these bass would start to move up in a predatory stance and then explode on top. And that's how I could peg when to cast. That's been my most successful way of using front-facing sonar so far. I've also seen bass react to different baits much differently than I thought they would, such as following a spinnerbait, let it sink slowly and watch it flutter down. But when you reel it, they have no interest in it. But they followed it when it was shimmering going down. I watched them nose worms, nose jigs. And while I wasn't trying to catch all these fish, but I was more trying to learn their behavior and stuff, because front-facing sonar is a fantastic technique to be able to use if you want to learn more about the fish in your area, what they're doing, how they're moving, the structure they're actually staying on. Are there fish on these brush piles? Are there fish on these ledges? Are there fish on these points? Are they up shallow? And it has been a fantastic tool just to learn more. And quite honestly, I'd use it more just not even casting fish, just watching them move, watching how they set up, watching they do, because that piques my scientific curiosity. It really does. That's one reason I got into the world of conservation, wildlife fisheries biology, conservation biology, is because I love to learn about these species and what they're actually doing. And using front-facing sonar has helped me out a lot. Now, some of the other experiences with the tournament angling. It really hasn't increased my catch rate for tournament angling. I have caught a few larger fish, but not by much. My largest bass I've caught with front-facing sonar, again, kayak world, guys, we all do everything by length. I do weigh a lot of my fish, was 20.5 inches. And it weighed about 4.5 pounds. Versus my old style fishing, sight fishing, watching these shad come to boil, or top water fishing in the shallows, slow rolling crankbaits over stuff, slow rolling spinnerbaits over stuff, plastic worms. I've caught, without front facing sonar, 3 fish over 24 inches, one being 9 pounds 4 ounces this year. Again, all tactical fishing company, fantastic company. But I've learned a lot watching fish and how they react. And I was of the mindset, a lot of people, front-facing sonar, cheater box, spotlight, and a lot of people who say that never used it. Before I really got in depth to it and using it, just from watching guys like Trey McKinney and DC Fishing, Wheeler, Mark Daniels Jr., watching those guys just catch, boom, 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 catch these fish using front-facing sonar. It's like, oh, that makes it too easy. Guys, this is not. Front-facing sonar is not a push and catch automatically when it comes to fish. It takes a lot of time, practice, learning how to work those baits in specific ways to make those fish bite. And I would go to say that these guys who are very proficient with front-facing sonar, one could catch without it. I have no doubt in my mind. If I fished, right now against Trey McKinney, DC, Mark Daniels Jr., any of those guys, they'd wax me. No doubt in my mind, with or without front-facing sonar. It's not a play-to-play thing, guys. It helps a lot. It lets you know that you're not fishing dead water. It turns catching, a bass, a big bass, fishing deep, cranking. You go from, 150 casts to 15 casts, 20 casts, 30 casts, something like that. So you do learn it like that. You do know you're not fishing dead water. You know there's fish there. It boosts your confidence a little bit. Front-facing sonar is not the end-all be-all. And I fished many tournaments where the person who was first, second, third, or fourth did not use front-facing sonar, or if they did, they only used it for very minuscule amounts of time, just to see is there dead water here or not. They scan it. It's like, hey, there's fish out there. They'll turn it off. And I really think that's smart, because I think these fish are getting wise. When they feel that that ping coming off that sonar, they know something's up. So I think fish are learning sonar just as we are. And that's just been kind of my experience with tournament fishing. My last 2 tournaments that I've used it on, I've probably, of the 8-hour tournaments, I may have used it for an hour, hour and a half. but I still fish my roots a lot of the time. A lot of bank beating, a lot of deep cranking, a lot of top water, underspin, stuff like that. And that's won me more tournaments recently than front-facing sonar has. I'm still going to use it now that I've got it to scan, see, make sure that I'm not fishing, 10,000 acre lake, make sure the 100 acres I'm in, it's not just dead water. There are no fish there whatsoever. That helps, but shaking a minnow at them and stuff like that, that's still not my type of fishing. I'm still going to go true to my roots, and it's working with front-facing sonar. I use it a little differently than some people. Again, I'm a little different than some people, as y'all probably noticed so far, because I'm wearing a robe right now. My university made me pay for it. I'm getting my money's worth. So, in conclusion, for this whole situation, is front-facing sonar having an effect on different fish populations? Yes, 100%. Mainly the crappie population in the southeast. And apparently also the Murray cod population in Australia from the research that I was able to read and dig into. Is it having a major effect on bass populations? Overall, I don't believe it is, just because we have such a high rate of catch and release. We're going to go delve deeper into what's wrong with catch and release later, but there are problems with it. I promise you guys, some of you may hate me for what I'm going to say in that episode, but this is coming from a non-biased person who both studies fisheries biology and fishes tournaments. I don't truly believe front-facing sonar is having a devastating impact on our bass populations yet. We will need more research to see the true effects of it in the future. But in conclusion, it's just another tool that people can choose to use or not to use. And something else will come along that will replace front-facing sonar. And we will go back to what we say now is KVD. He made his living once he got really good with side scan, because you can see fish. They're right there. You know they're there. You know their bed's there. You can see them really well. Flashers for bill dance, and they got those. 2D sonar, and they got that. They made a killing on that. People called that cheating. People called side scan cheating. People called clear view cheating. People are calling front-facing sonar cheating. And when the next thing comes out, they're going to say that that's cheating too. Front-facing sonar wasn't so bad, just like we said with side scan. That's just my personal opinion, guys and gals. So far, my experience with front-facing sonar is I'm not that good at fishing with it. I need to put a lot more time to learn it. But kudos to the fishermen who fish without it and still win, because that's basically what I'm still doing. And kudos to those who have learned how to properly use front-facing sonar to win. Because in the end, it's this, folks. Whether you like it or don't like it, whether they ban it or don't ban it, people using it, people not using it, all have one common goal. That is to catch fish and preserve our fisheries for the next generation, so that my son, your daughters, your kids can go out there and they can catch fish and do the sport that we love. So, thank you guys for your time. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, night, evening, morning, whatever it is the time you're watching this. And don't forget, guys and gals, the main reason that folks like me get into the business of tournament fishing, get into the business of learning fisheries biology and conservation biology, is we love the sport, we love the outdoors, and we want to see everyone else get to enjoy it like they should. Keep our public lands public, our public lakes public. Go out and be good. Thank y'all.